Welcome this evening to the Safe Community Council Committee meeting for July 24th, 2024. I'm Councilmember Toohey, and I have this evening Councilmember Fossey along with Jennifer Gregerson from the administration office, and we have another guest here tonight who's going to start us off on our agenda, which is the Neighborhood Community Awareness Block Watch Briefing. So I would like to welcome Emily Wicks, who's been in charge of that, to give us an update. Emily?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. Just as a background for folks, I think a lot of you know, the Block Watch program is a one-time funding source from ARPA. City council members had a certain number of dollars to dedicate to certain things and organizations, and Councilmember Toohey and Councilmember Schwab asked to use some money to support this effort. So we've drafted a strategic plan and kind of shared that earlier on this year. I started in about February, and part of the initial plan was to do a series of 5 different meetings, bringing together the community to kind of engage and kind of kick off a block watch. As I was going around and talking to different community members and leaders, it was kind of clear that these were the most effective things that we were doing, is talking directly to our community members, meeting them where they are out in the community. So the strategy has kind of changed a little bit, and we're going to use this opportunity as a time to build really good training materials for our neighbors and people that want to get engaged. There are tons of people out there kind of doing somewhat of a block watch for their neighborhood, active and getting out there. There's neighborhood associations that are kind of mobilizing people at a smaller level. So we want to really be able to capture those folks and mobilize them and give them the resources and tools to do that. So we'll be working on a training and education packet, and that packet we're looking at kind of how the document looks, kind of discussing what is crimes, things to consider, what is suspicious activity. We'll have some community crime data and some summaries and statistics for various neighborhoods. We'll talk about what the city is doing about that. So all the work that they're doing around Everett at work and the different things that people are coordinating on, and what our officers have been doing to address safety needs in our community. And then what the individuals can do so they can get engaged, activate, report, and be proactive. So we're going to take all of the resources that we have at the city and all the tools that we can communicate and help people understand how best to do that. We're going to go into details about reporting crime, getting all of the contact information, so everything that we've been sharing with folks on Everett at work, having a different version of that too for people that maybe are not as tech savvy and want to report in different ways. So where to call on everything from graffiti and parking to helping us show where patterns exist if there's crime. And then we'll talk about the Block Watch program, our values, our ideas around it, which is really to be proactive and to help our community address crime both before it occurs through other mechanisms and community engagement, and then also how to report crime properly and accurately. And so many people out there, for instance, think, I don't want to bother the officers, I don't want to call, but the officers say time and time again, if it's small, just let us know if you hear something. And so often it's just people not, like, they hear something and they're not sure a crime's being committed. And so there's a lot of times that happens. So we're going to make people really aware of that. And we're going to provide a lot of ideas for the small group, for the larger group. We know that people are really busy, but we want to make safety a part of our daily life. So whether that's activating what we would deem like a hot zone, which we all know that some of the crimes that happen at night happen around some of our parks and some of those spaces. And we also want to make sure that people are out when youth are walking, giving them tips and ideas on, these are the best times to be out and about, and just have your eyes on your community in a really positive way, because if people see you, they're going to notice that. So we're working, I've met with about 85 different people and organizations. We have a big list. I've been out at our 3-on-3 tournament and other local events, getting a lot of interest and a lot of people that want to do different things. So we're engaging them in that process, teaching them how to start a block watch program and giving them the tools And the hope is that by the end, in about October, when we have all the materials really vetted too, because we're going to work with our officers and others to make sure that we're all aligned and we're all helping each other, we're going to bring that group together and hopefully some more folks to review that and kind of have them be our kind of kickoff group to get it started and then continue to build from there. One of the pieces too is we'll have a landing page. There's one already up where my contact exists, but we want to start asking people, do you have a block watch already started? Do you want to join one? Are you interested in starting one? So as those people reach out, we can also connect them with neighbors that are next to them and also connect them to their neighborhood association where there's, I would say, low-hanging fruit and a lot of people that want to be involved already. So we're going to provide that, and we're going to start creating some of the tools that they need, whether that's reflective vests for folks to be out in the wintertime and be safer while they're walking. We're talking about some sort of signage that's really positive for neighborhoods to put up about looking out for their neighbors and doing some other pieces. Oh, and also developing a mail piece that's not just about coming to an event, but actually gives some tips and some insight so that someone can put that on their fridge as a reminder of, ways to report and can use that and can also jump in at any time. So even if they didn't, catch us when we were first working on it, the program is ongoing, so they can jump in the future. So I'd happy to answer any questions. It's, kind of a building process, and we're working on the training with our officers right now to get a good set of tools together.
So excuse me. So you're thinking that October might be the official, when you have everything pulled together and can do a big launch kind of a thing? Is that what you're
Yeah,
thinking?
I'm giving myself some time just because we've started drafting the materials and there's a lot of really positive input that folks
Yeah.
are giving. So we want to get it to a good spot and also make it a sustainable document that we can update on a yearly basis as things change or as we get ideas. And so that's something. And we're going to, again, put a lot of ideas that neighbors have had in there, from gift baskets that they're doing for their community to play dates in the park. If they have an elementary school in the area, they've gotten a lot of great ideas from community members about what they're doing.
That's great. And then I assume you'll have a presence at the National Night Out.
Yes, we'll be at the National Night Out. We're going to have, we've been giving out little kind of one-pagers asking folks like what neighborhood they're in, some of the biggest concerns, what they love about their neighborhoods as well. People can also email their responses. And so we're going to have that. The officers are going to have those with them. And so people that get really interested, they have a way to route them if I'm not at the event specifically, but I'm going to try to make it to a few of them and help spread the word.
Right. And then there's a flyer going out. When does the flyer go out, do you think?
We will probably send the flyer out closer to October when the materials
Yeah,
are a
everything's
little
pretty
bit
much
closer
ready
to
to
being
go.
ready so that they all kind of match and blend and it's all one kind of themed piece of
And then
piece
I
of
have one
materials.
last question.
Yeah.
Is there, since I have funded the first part of it, is there enough funding to complete this to a good point?
Definitely where we're at right now. If we were to do a mailer, we might need to consider some more dollars, but it kind of depends on how we use that. And I call it a mailer, but it could be a document that we continue to give out at meetings. And then if we
Right.
want to expand that, and it's been a really great tool for people, we can send that more farther, out.
Yeah. Well,
But right now, I think, yes, we're funded.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited that, you're tying in with the neighborhood groups because I think a lot of them were already on that bandwagon, ready to go, so.
Absolutely. They've been our best resource.
Yeah, good. All right, Councilmember Fossey, do you have any questions? Okay. We just got an update, Councilmember Bader, on the Block Watch program. So I don't know if you have any outside questions?
I did not, but just thanks for all the information you've been feeding our way, and sounds like it's come together really well, so.
And thank you for all your great feedback via email and, the conversations that we had. It was great.
Thanks.
Great, well, thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, now we're moving on to our second item. We have the buffer zone implementation recap briefing, and I think Jennifer is going to take the lead on that.
That's
There's
right.
nobody else here, but.
Yeah, clearly it must be me. Not the person in charge of it or the expert, but I think I have a good, solid briefing to share with you guys about how the buffer zone ordinance has been implemented so far. So, As a reminder, most of you passed the buffer zone ordinance in May of last year, 2023. And then staff enacted 2 buffer zones in early fall of last year. In April of this year, we did a 3rd one that was put in place near Andy's Place on 33rd and Lombard. So I've got updates about all 3 of them. Starting, I guess, in reverse order, Andy's Place, the most recent one. That buffer zone, along with other city-led work, has had some really immediate positive results in the neighborhood. So police patrols during key operating hours of Andy's Place have been effective, and you actually got, I think, 3 resident emails today that did also refer to that noticed that impact. But so those additional patrols have been effective in deterring loitering and drug activity. They've made multiple arrests and reduction in connection with that negative activity. Andy's Place staff, Compass Health, and neighbors have reported positive changes since the inception. The Andy's Place staff, they've noted that the buffer zone is actually helpful as a tool to educate their residents and guests. So instead of just trying to get folks to leave, to be able to point to something as to what kind of activity is allowed and the importance of that. Public Works is going to install buffer zone signage this summer, so next few months or less, to help increase awareness. They feel like what our staff and what Andy's Place and the residents are seeing, like that kind of awareness on the street is important. And then community support teams are continuing to provide outreach around the service location, and so with the extra focus. Yeah.
Councilmember Fossey?
Wasn't the signage issue brought up when this was first going through?
Yeah, I don't have a lot more detail, but I do remember when we talked about, like, does it make sense to do a sign when it's like, oh, like, it's the end of the block, so I can just go to the next block, and does it push folks sort of right to the edges of the buffer zone? It is true that, we've seen, I guess, differing perspectives on whether activity just gets pushed right outside to the edges of that zone area, or whether it's sort of more dispersed or impacted in different ways. I think in this case, so I'm not sure where they're gonna actually put those signs, if it's more like, not like buffer zone begins here, but more like you are in the buffer zone area. So I can find out exactly what the concept is and how that perception has changed over like, we don't want signs to, we actually do need to communicate, sort of on the sidewalk about the existence of the buffer zone.
I brought this up as a concern when it initially went through, so I'm a little bit disappointed that it hasn't been mitigated yet, because folks obviously do not know all the time if they are in that zone, and it seems like an extra use of our resources to be able to like send out police and such to constantly notify them when a sign could help with the intent of putting those there. So,
Well, the extra patrols have been basically using the need and seed, so it's like north and south emphasis patrols, using that tool that we have around buffer zones as they have been stood up. And I think what I've heard from our team is that wasn't in part of the original kind of plan for rolling out the buffer zones. We didn't contemplate asking for more patrols, but it's been useful. So I think it's something that our police staff and community development staff would say is an important piece of it. We've also only made 1 arrest for a violation of a buffer zone in all 3.
it's not about the arrest, it's about the amount of work and contact and people not necessarily needing to or wanting to be in those areas if it was clearly identified where they were. Less manpower, busy work.
Yeah.
And
Okay, noted. This, so the Andy's Place zone that's been in place since April, 3 months in, they're gonna be moving to put those signs up.
before instituting any future ones, and I know that the mayor controls this, but I would strongly encourage you to have signs at the beginning of instituting any more buffer zones.
Okay. Yeah, Other questions?
I
I've got the
I
other
had
two.
one
Yeah, please.
question, comment. So in reading the letters from the neighbors that we got today, I think we got them today, you're correct in saying that they do see an improvement, but they're still feeling challenged, especially at night, and with people living in cars on the streets and everything. And they talked about, and I don't know if we have staff that works directly with Compass Health, but they talked about how they had, it appeared more security guards during the day than at night, and they would like to see more at night, and I don't know if we can work with them on that issue or the people in the cars, because they're still, it sounded like they're still seeing issues that are troubling.
Yeah, we do have staff that interface directly and meet really regularly with Compass Health, and take back those concerns. The additional security guards was one of the changes that Compass Health moved forward with, along with a variety of other operational changes, but,
Okay.
well, I've shared the emails already with
Oh,
that
okay,
team, so.
great, appreciate that, okay, good, I think that's important, I'm sure the neighbors are probably listening, because they knew
Yeah,
about
I
the
think
meeting,
so.
so. That we did listen, we did read it, and, hopefully we can improve that situation, so,
Yeah.
thank you. Councilmember Bader, did you have any comments on this buffer zone?
I was just gonna say, I mean, the issues that I read, as all three of us did, I'm sure all four of us did, the emails. I don't know that those are buffer zone issues per se. Obviously, we still want to get them solved and worked on there. And then maybe the car issue then deals with our item number 3 on, as we talk about parking and public safety as well. So hopefully that'll follow. But obviously also eager to hear about how things are going in the 2 other buffer
Yeah.
zones as well.
Yeah, so the next one I've got for you, the service location buffer zone, so that's at 26 and Rockefeller at the UCC Church. Staff did a 6-month review in April with a recommendation to maintain that buffer zone, same for all 3 at this point, of course. We've got anecdotal reports about impacts in the park, at Clark Park, but other rangers have reported fewer impacts, so sort of mixed reviews, hard to say, it's anecdotal, so we just continue to work to mitigate. And that was the buffer zone that did have an arrest that was made related to a buffer zone violation. It was after, numerous warnings and contacts, of course. And then
So on that particular zone, I know that we had a few of the neighbors that had come in to visit, to talk with us several times before this went into place. We haven't heard from them, so we kind of assume that things have improved for them. The one gal was pretty upset a
Yeah.
couple of times. You
Yeah,
haven't
I
talked
don't-
to her or anything?
I don't think, well, I guess I'm not sure if we've heard from them or not. That didn't rise up to the report
Yeah,
information that
I
I have,
haven't,
so.
I can't recall. Okay, great, that'd be great if that did help them.
Yeah. Last one is the high impact area buffer zone that's near the Fred Meyers on Evergreen Way down by Casino Road. Same thing with the 6-month review in April to maintain that. In this case, our Public Works encampment cleanup crew has noted that in that zone, there's been improvements. So especially the 526 pedestrian overpass, which has historically been a very regular location that required encampment cleanup. So they've seen a real drastic reduction in congregating and litter encampments in that area. That the overpass and then that kind of weird landing place behind the businesses there at Casino Square. Yeah. So for those 2, so the downtown one and the Fred Meyer one, for those first 2 buffer zones, 911 calls and officer-initiated calls have both decreased since implementation. That was part of that 6-month review. We keep working on mitigating those impacts, like you said, so the encampment cleanup team, community outreach, police and fire. I already mentioned the thing about the special emphasis patrols. This was something that came about as we worked with the Andy's Place buffer zone, but as we move forward, when we're engaged with service facilities, when those might be part of a buffer zone, one of the things we want to make sure that we do is to encourage them to be part of that, to invite and facilitate neighborhood feedback. Because just like you noted with those letters, it's the buffer zone was one part of one tool, but a lot of times there's operational changes or even just open communication that can be helpful. The service facilities want to make sure they're serving their clients, in a healthy and successful way, and so that can be supportive on both sides. So, my last part of this update is that you might remember that we were planning to keep you in the loop and provide official notice when we were getting close to implementing any future buffer zones. So I don't have the specific timeline, but we do have one that the mayor has asked us to evaluate. So she's asked, not ask me, staff to look at the calls at the Imagine Children's Museum in the area around that. So staff are looking at that data now, and likely that they'll recommend to the mayor to establish a buffer zone there. And I don't know what the timeline is, but that's under review right now.
I know.
Good, yeah.
I see a lot of the issues every day at work, so that would be a good location, especially with all the families that are coming and going. Yeah. Councilmember Fossey, any other questions? Okay. Councilmember Bader? Yes.
And maybe because I'm kind of, since I wasn't here at the creation, so to speak, but Jennifer, can we, and I apologize if I missed this in email, but can I see the metrics, the data on the 911 calls, that kind of thing, and if there are metrics we're looking at as we go into establishing one, can I get the information on that, just so I have some better informed, like if you're looking at the one over around the Imagine Children's Museum, what kind of metrics are you looking at? I assume 911 calls, maybe arrests, I don't know, what else, that would be great.
Yes, there is also, I believe that we distributed it in the past. I think some of that analysis about the first two buffer zones, and I probably didn't get it because it was at the end of last year. So I'll get you that. And then the ordinance establishes definitions for like qualifying events. So it's
Gotcha.
calls for service, reports from city staff, reports by members of the public, and there's a list of types of conduct, crimes, things like that. So I'll
Great.
get that. Whatever we distributed last time, I make sure it gets to everybody, and then same thing with the new location too. Yeah. It's probably not until I sat down next to you, Councilmember Bader, that I was like, oh yeah, you weren't sitting up there at the time last year. So yeah.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. And I know it's a lot of work for the staff, but I think we've got some good things that have come out of that improvement. So now on the agenda is a committee discussion on parking and public safety. And so I will just open that up. I'll open up to Councilmember Bader, I think, has some comments.
And I'm not sure if I surfaced this one or not, but as I was recalling back to the early part of the year, I think it might have had to do with some people asking that they have seen in certain parts of town, whether it's in a park, like over at Jackson Park, or over by the station or other places, where there are signs up that talk about no parking, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or something like that. And I think there might have been some curiosity around what triggers those signs to be put up, and are they effective? How are they enforced? Any kind of information around that was kind of, as I think maybe, if I recall, was what people were curious about, and what so thinking about the folks who are at Andy's place, not sure if that'd be a tool they would want or not, but if they are interested in that, what do they need to come to the city with to make that request or what have you? So
I know a little bit about when we kind of re-examined some of those. It's sort of like no overnight parking, but it's probably set hours, but effectively the idea of no overnight parking. The ones that I'm thinking of that are kind of around Pine and Jackson Park and that side of the Delta neighborhood were based on resident requests, and think calls for service, and then just generally our police awareness of the challenge. There are, I believe that there is a particular area where someone who's using their vehicle as their home is kind of moving around to comply with the letter of the law, but still I think frustrating the neighborhood because they're within the time limit in each particular area, but they just kind of rotate through. I think that's tough because that's like anything, I guess, if you want to just skirt around the rules, like it's hard to enforce against that. There probably are also some, well, we'll have to sort of think about, some other information for you guys because there's additional federal and state things that come into play that I'm not up to speed on the details of it, but in some cases I think it can be effective though. So like I know there's the one scenario perhaps where somebody kind of is smart enough to get around the rules a little bit, but I think that it might change the impacts in other cases, so, yeah.
But, and even if they're smart enough to get around, I mean, I think that often helps to lessen the impact on any one particular neighbor if they, move around some. I mean, again, someone imperfect. And obviously, at least from what I've been told, I think from traffic, obviously, the presence of a handicap placard could make a difference as well. So, yeah, would love to get, that kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
My apologies for not recalling exactly where that came from when we were probably brainstorming back in January, but I think that was the genesis of that.
Okay, Councilmember Fossey, do you have anything on that topic? Okay. I'm going to ask Jennifer, I know that you gave us that nice email today with a lot of information regarding traffic through Everett. North Everett, particularly with the lane closures, the 529 closure, I-5 construction, and it, just turns into a huge parking lot in many of the streets up there, residential ones. And so I thought, your email, I don't have it with me, otherwise I'd read it, but if you can paraphrase it, I think it's really good for our community to hear about that issue and what the city's done and is doing.
Sure, yeah. So there are a lot of neighborhoods that the folks that live in our North End neighborhoods are experiencing, and also other residents and guests to Everett that are experiencing a lot of traffic impacts from I-5 projects and the state SR 529 bridge repair construction project. So 529 really had to happen. We had hoped that they could delay that so that we would not have both of them in one summer, but as our staff put it, we implored WashDOT, the State Department of Transportation, to delay the bridge repair, but they insisted that it really was urgent. So it's happening, and we are hearing from residents, and I know you guys are experiencing, actually most of us kind of live in that direction and are experiencing it as well. So city staff have been working with the state project staff and their communications department, and they've got 5 pieces, I guess, of a plan that they're going to be rolling out this week, but it really will continue all through into October. October is when the 529 bridge is anticipated to be completed and reopened, and well, I think a little bit before that, but late fall, probably around the same time at the end of the day. The I-5 work will also be done, and that'll add in a new HOV lane that will, folks will probably still experience traffic up in Marysville, but the Everett drive will be improved. So before we get to October, we still have a few months of congestion to survive. So WashDOT and the city are going to share a coordinated message on social media. So really trying to educate folks outside of Everett that there is severe congestion anticipated in Everett, particularly every Friday afternoon. And staying on I-5 is a better path. WashDOT is adjusting or is committed to installing one of those big portable message signs, like the highway signs, to discourage cut-through traffic, so inside the city. They're also there's an overhead electronic sign on northbound I-5 at Lowell Road, so they're gonna change that signage to talk about, like, stay on I-5. There's no better path, ignore Google Maps and Waze. And WashDOT's gonna put additional signage for further traffic restrictions at Broadway and 7th Street to discourage cut-through traffic and U-turn traffic. And the last one of this current plan, Everett Police are gonna put 2 officers Friday afternoons for enhanced enforcement to provide a presence in this first phase, like, tomorrow, or I guess this coming Friday, 2 key traffic violation points, so Marine View Drive and Bridgeway, and Broadway and 7th Street. So you'll see signs at Broadway and 7th, and you'll see officers there. And like I said, this will be this first couple days when all this stuff will happen, but the plan is to just keep that up and probably refine it. So if we do enforcement up at that end, maybe we'll move it to another intersection where we see different impacts. But our traffic engineer and communication staff and police are all working with WashDOT to help mitigate the impacts of those state projects.
So I have one, that's great, and I really appreciate that update, and I'm sure our citizens do too. But I see a lot of, because I hang out around 41st Street a lot, I see a lot of people coming, from Boeing usually, or that work up in the industrial area, come down Glenwood, and they speed down Mukilteo Boulevard, and they get into 41st, and then they just disperse north. And, that would be a really good location for signage or something. They also come down Federal, which they're not supposed to, but I just see them turning constantly. But as a way for them to get out and about and get moving through the city, probably up to Marysville area. So they might, if they have a chance to look at that. There's a lot of traffic that comes that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's useful. Corey knows the city quite well.
Yes,
So I
he
know our
does.
traffic engineers are like on point with this, but it's a good reminder of that, like your experience. And if they're focused on the folks that are coming from south, we maybe aren't always thinking about, and if I-5 is like death, it's hard message to continue on 41st and get onto that on-ramp,
Exactly.
but that is really the better path.
Yes, it is. And I know that the bridge to Mukilteo, off Mukilteo Boulevard, is supposed to be closed by the end of summer, if not in August. So that might cut down a little bit of traffic, but most of it I'm seeing is coming down from Glenwood and then onto Mukilteo Boulevard. So, Councilmember Bader?
Thanks. Yeah, and I will say, I see every day the effectiveness of some signage, and Councilmember Fossey might experience it too, trying to get across Everett Avenue on the east side of Broadway. That demonstrates that the signage is actually having an effect because people are deciding to take Everett Avenue to get on 5 there rather than go Broadway and try to squeeze in, I think, because there's so much traffic on Everett Avenue now trying to get on 5. At least that's my perception as I try to cut across. I also would say to any Everett residents that are watching that in conversations I've had with our city traffic engineer, he had also suggested some other options to WashDOT that he and I would agree, I think would have been more effective at dealing with the traffic situation, and I'm throwing WashDOT under the bus here, but I guess I'm probably willing to do that. That they rejected those solutions. So just so Everett residents know that I think our city traffic engineer and traffic department was doing its level best to try to get the best possible solution we could in these dire circumstances. And anyhow, just wanted to pass that on to folks who might be listening.
Yes, I know we have to take an alternate route to get to Ray's Drive-In when we go. We have to be very sly about our approach. Councilmember Fossey, do you have anything on that one?
Different traffic you're seeing?
No, I think Councilmember Baber encapsulated that one.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead then and talk about our next meeting proposed agenda items?
Yeah.
If you want to start that, Jennifer?
Sure. So I'm hopeful, I think we are on track to get this scheduled, to get, speaking of those traffic engineers, to get that team to your meeting next month to talk about the Safe Streets for All grant implementation. So traffic calming, arterial speeds, so I think that's in the works. I can almost guarantee it, but
So they're coming here?
to the committee meeting, yeah.
Okay, good.
To do a briefing, yeah. And, that's the main one that I know we're.
And if Corey is in that, if we could, by then we will have had a couple more of the red light cameras implemented. If, because I know he had immediate stats on the one at the school. If we could get something like that, that would be great.
Sure.
And then I also, and it might be part of the Safe Streets for All, but I know that like Jackson Elementary School doesn't have any flashing lights. They just have one sign with children in a crosswalk. And there is a stop sign there, but a lot of this traffic that we just talked about cuts right in front of it. And they pretty much stop, but they are going faster than they should. So there's really no flashing light or, speed zone signage for Jackson Elementary School. So it should normally be a very, sleepy road, but it's not in the afternoon. So if we can find out what the
Yeah.
rules are for all of the schools to make sure that they all have the correct signage.
Yes, I'll ask about that one. I feel like there was a plan
Yeah.
to improve the signage there, but I don't know.
Well,
I'll
they are
look
gonna,
at it.
they are in the middle of, or they're just starting to build a new school there, and they're gonna put in a new entrance, which will be helpful, and I think they're gonna then complete the sidewalk across the street, because there isn't one. And maybe the signage is part of that, I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Yes, Councilmember Bader.
Thanks. Just a couple things to throw out. One of the concerns I think I raised earlier back in January, and it ties into the noise ordinance, is modified mufflers as well, so something I heard regularly. One I don't see is on there, or unless it ties into traffic enforcement, is complaints I got about the overly tinted windows, and would we ever consider an emphasis on that, as well as other emphasis. And then the last thing I want to throw out isn't necessarily related to these, but it kind of ties into all the traffic traffic work, road work discussions we've had is, my guess is they're measuring it already, but I think it'd be useful if we had some traffic measurements now on some of these key roads like Federal or Mukilteo Boulevard or what have you, and those measurements after the WashDOT opens the HOV lane north to Marysville. I think the hope, and maybe I'm having false hope here, but that will improve traffic enough on 5 that will draw a lot of these folks, especially from Southwest Everett, away from cutting through, that they'll find I-5 a better experience and will stay with 526 and stay with connecting to 5 that way. And it'd be nice if we had those measurements, especially in the future. I mean, if 5 years from now, somebody on Federal complains about 50 cars an hour going down during rush hour, but we know before WashDOT improved I-5 that it was actually 100 an hour, then at least we can point back and say, it may not be what you want, but it's definitely been an improvement from what it was before. So if we haven't had, if traffic engineering hasn't captured measurements like that on these key arterials where we think the work on I-5 might help, maybe I'd like to suggest maybe we look at doing that in the next couple of months so we can have some decent baselines to measure against.
Anything else, Councilmember Foster, you want to add to our list? Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Appreciate that. And I'm so glad you were able to talk to us about the I-5 and that whole big mess. Appreciate that. All right, well, we'll see you guys all in August then. Thank you so much.